So tonight's Thursday Did You Know presentation is ES Green Dent Corn. So it's going to be an interesting look at a very specific aspect of this man who was into so many aspects of life. But first I just wanted to welcome all of you for coming. I wanted to thank you for coming on a wet autumn day. It's actually kind of perfect for talking about colored corn, I thought. And for hearing one of Stevens County's more fascinating residents. First, I'd like to thank Bill Eckerson and Alex Schuler for their help in putting the event together tonight and helping me locate some of the artifacts and articles and research items on Strubbe's life. I also want to thank the High Tea Committee for the Linda Retzlaff, Kathy Anderson, Evelyn Lindstrom, Pat Smith, did I miss anyone? For making the lovely refreshments, and don't forget at the end to enjoy some of them. And then tonight's topic is nominally about Ernest Strubbe's Green Dent corn variety. It's also really seeing, and one of the themes I saw when researching him was he was like the uniquely early 20th century man. He was analog, he was pre-digital. This is a really interesting person who got out in the world and used all of their faculties, all of their skills to really engage and generously share what they discover. And I really, really enjoyed this research. So you can see a little bit of green dent corn here. One thing I'll point about green, and I think I heard some comments about this when people were looking at the corns in the old honey jars, is green is an unusual color for even colored corn. And the way that it's created in Ernest Strubbe, I have a quick question, since they say it one way in the U.S.D.A. Strubbe or Strubbe?
Strubbe.
Strubbe, yeah. That's what I was saying, and then I played the volume, and they said Strubbe. I'm like, I think it's Strubbe. But think of how they would have pronounced Chicago. So the green comes from blue. So it's actually a very thin layer of blue over the underlying yellow that's creating this really beautiful green iridescent color. And he is one of the uniquely observant people who saw the possibility at the very beginning of where this could go. But good down. It's really just one of the corns that he came. He really, through the course of his experimentation, had a rainbow of corns. And you can see some of the corn tonight on the slides and also on the side over here. These are nice, the ones in the honey jars, because those were kept out of the light and were not faded. The two examples of the corn art over here, you can see how the colors have muted over time and shifted into the yellow. But here we've got 1973 red dent, 1973 green dent, and an orange dent corn from 1975. And these are all in our collection. But like I said, there really is a rainbow of these corn. And if you look carefully, just for those who are not familiar with corn, me about a week ago, this is the dent. It's that little dimple at the top of the face of the corn, not necessarily in the side corn. It's characteristic, and it's not found in Mexican maize. It is found in the dent corn. So, he saw the possibility in all those colors, and he saw ways to develop them and, of course, mingle them with his other interests. He's an artist. So he creates the, seed art as well. I love the owl. You can see the actual owl on the side over here. And the owl was then used in the 1982 fall edition of the Seed Savers Exchange. And that was sort of a labor of love by early heritage seed Renaissance rebirth advocate Ken Wheatley. Oh yeah, I flipped it. And of course, Ernest subscribed, so he not only was a seed developer and he was active in the national, regional exchange of seeds with other seed developers. And Kent Wheatley drove out and visited Ernest Strubbe for this particular issue, and they had a really lovely interview in his house. And I thought it would be a good way to start to read a little bit of the article. So I'll go ahead and read it. I put it up on the screen, but don't worry, you don't have to read it from wherever you are. So I had been driving since early morning. Late in the afternoon, I arrived at Ernest Strubbe's farm in western Minnesota, just ahead of a huge black prairie thunderstorm that was rolling in from the west. Ernest met me at the door, and it cut loose raining just as we went inside. There was an old wood stove over by a desk where he had been doing some paintings and matting some photos of birds and wildflowers. The archway into the next room was just solid with ears of corn. Back through it, I could see a window lined with corn and a rod high across the room that had corn hanging all over it. Shelves on the wall in the front room were lined with ears of corn hanging on display. It was every color of the rainbow, reddish blacks to pure whites, emerald greens, turquoise blues, light blues, purples, pinks, brown, calico blues, calico pinks, white-capped reds, oranges, yellows, and more. Ernest said that the sun had faded most of it, but it was still dazzling. I'm wondering, if anyone here have the opportunity to visit Ernest Strubbe and see this firsthand? I would love to pick your brains later for...
You don't have any photographs of the arch?
Nope. No. But it's a really nice description. That helped me.
Note that Ernest wasn't married, so that's why he could have...
That is, one of the people do suggest, how does he do it all? Maybe he wasn't married and he lived with his mother. This is from the same issue, showing Ernest Strubbe in some of his corn paintings. If you look carefully, you can recognize, right, this isn't a laser pointer, is it? Oh my God! Right here, this is the owl that we have over there, and this is the mallard that we have over there. And I was very afraid taking these out for the week as I put this together, because it's the time of year when mice like to sneak in, and I was afraid they would come and eat our corn. Un momento. Good question. Okay, but before I get into the corn, a little bit about Ernest Strubbe. So he was born in September 20th, 1915. He died in 1986. Someone asked me that. And an article in the November 24th, 1963 edition of the Minneapolis Sunday Tribune by Jim Kimball called "Meet a Many-Hobbied Man" listed some of his many hobbies, and you really get this picture of someone that, although he was a farmer by occupation, he had numerous preoccupations that defined him as a man. He was a conservationist, really, really concerned with not squandering the natural beauty and the natural resources around us. He was a farmer. He was an ornithologist. He loved birds, studying birds, photographing birds, reading about birds. He was a painter, a self-taught painter, and you can even see through the course of the talk a little of his development over time and see how he got, just through patient practice, to his high level of art. He bred chickens. I heard some people talking about his green eggs. He had eggs of multiple colors. He had beautiful chickens, exotic breeds from South America. He was a botanist. One of the things I like in our collection, we have a little notebook, you know, those little spiral bound ones you put in your pocket, just filled with drawings of wildflowers that he saw, and then notes and notes about them. He was a photographer. He got his first Brownie camera when he was in the military in either Italy or Germany. I forget which order he was. Then he would save up and buy film. He said all the wealthy guys from out east all had their own cameras, but they all gambled away their money and couldn't afford the film. That would be another talk. His World War II photos are really an interesting document of coming through Italy and Germany after the bombing and after the liberation. He was a naturalist. He, was interested in anything wild. He was interested in the rocks. He was interested in the bugs. He was interested in the mammals and the birds and the plants. And he was an educator. This is part of, again, he was generous. He would frequently host 4-H groups to his studio or his house, his farm, and show them slides of birds. He had 10,000 slides of birds. We have a lot of them, but I haven't gone through all of them. He was a World War II vet. I already mentioned that. But that, again, that was where he learned his love of photography, and you can see a lot of his photos were of the soldiers. It was of the vets taking care of mules. And he also was really, and that's probably why he could do all he did, he was a good bookbinder. He would bind articles, he would bind his drawings, he would make all these subjects. He knew where to find the research he had done. And so I see the essential ingredients of the 20th century eclectic mind. He had a curious mind. He didn't miss anything because he was curious about everything. He had a methodical approach. You could definitely see that in his 50 years of developing green corn. He was industrious. He talked about how he couldn't paint in the summer because it's hard to go from the tractor to the studio, but in the winter, after a couple weeks later, then he would go down, and he had these lists of birds he wanted to paint through the season, and they were long lists. And the list grew as he got older. He was a generous spirit. He would share his knowledge. He would share his seeds with other seed breeders. He would write for the volunteer and conservationist magazines, and didn't hold his knowledge close to him. He had a great attention to detail, whether it was looking at a flower, looking at one kernel of corn, or sitting in a blind on Frog Lake for 8 to 10 hours and noticing a rare bird and getting a photo of it, which speaks to perseverance and patience. And then he had the holistic worldview. He's like, I could make more money if I drained this section, but then I wouldn't have the birds, I wouldn't have the wildlife production, and I wouldn't have what makes life really great. And you see that sentiment where he's deciding things not based on a very focused, but on sort of a whole life worldview. And I love this detail of the bird. You can really see the observation of detail and the way he layers the paints and he layers the colors to really catch that sheen. You can see this methodical process in his progression as a painter. So that's why I kind of start here. We have a more complete record of his painting progression. But he did these little studies in little notebooks. This is that little one that I said, those spiral, I can't touch that side of me. Those spirals that go in your notebooks that go in your pocket. It was filled with, here's amphibians, and here are flowers, and then little notes. He also was a big collector of bird and animal books from around the world, and he would redraw them. That's how he learned his craft. He would trace them on tracing paper. You can see grids here. That's an old artist method for making something bigger. You grid it out when it's little, you make a bigger grid and draw what you see in each, and you can scale things up and down to make you know, a little drawing of a deer be larger in your painting if you want that. And then he collected these volumes. These are birds, volume 3. There's mammals, rodents, and rabbits, volume 20. These are 2 that we have in our collection. I put one of them on the side table. It's pretty delicate. It's from 1939. So I just opened up to a representative page, but afterwards you might want to look at it. Slides are nice, but when we're talking about painting, it's nice to see the actual object. And then I like that he laid out his book with the birds and paintings he wanted to do, and then filled them in, not, you know, beginning to end, just as the occasion came. He painted pileated. This is a pileated woodpecker, but he also painted the ivory-billed woodpecker, which is a close relation, but has been on the extinct list for quite a while now. And here is a yellow-bellied flicker, but he was noted for one of the first observations of a red-shafted flicker. Again, you gotta have an eye for detail to know the difference between a yellow-bellied and a red-shafted flicker at, I don't know how far out. So there's a 1974 article in the Morris Tribune about Ernest Strubbe as a painter by Fred Peterson. And Fred noted that the images in this style of painting are more than photographically realistic. They depict details the eye cannot see, but the mind knows are there. And I think that's an important aspect of how he painted. He wanted his paintings to show you all the little details that help you identify that bird. And you want, you know, to get it right. And he masterfully paints what he sees, but also what he knows about these creatures, so that the size, shape, color, gesture, habitat, feather patterns are all painted with a faithfulness that satisfies both the eye and the mind. Now, does anyone recognize this little bridge across the muddy creek? There's a photo in our collection, and there was actually a photo of that at someplace safe that was printed, and I'm like, boy, but I don't know which bridge it is. Now it's gone, and there it is. But so that might have been a Ernest Strubbe photo of that bridge that he used.
Do you know the location?
Muddy Creek, it's Pepperton Township. This is his Kingfisher from 1940. He's tracing, he's drawing what he knows, but you can see just 11 years later the skill level that he's developing, and you can tell also, you know, looking at the change from this to this, you sort of see what's important to him and how he wants to develop things to make them better and better, which is a great thing to see, you know, in an artist or anyone who's studying something. Did I go the wrong way? I think we need a podium. Probably have one. Duplicate slide. So we see some of those same things happening in going back to that rainbow color varieties. So this is from a early 1980s seed catalog, and you can see his name alluded, the ES refers to him, of the various corns that were being traded and purchased around the country. When we look at his process, you see the same careful observation, patience, and perseverance that made him an excellent painter. In that 1982 interview with Kent Wheatley, Ernest describes how he got started. I like this quote because you really can see how he sees, he sees closely. In 1920, this is Ernest Strubbe, in 1929, I crossed some yellow field corn with some black popcorn. What I got was a dark-colored black bronze dented ear. At first, the color was really spotty with bronzes and brownish purples. I worked with it for quite a while and finally got color really even and uniform. I was pretty proud of that. Then I crossed some of that original dark-colored black bronze with some Rustler's white dent, which was an old field corn that farmers around here used to raise in the early 1920s. A lot of the interesting things started to crop up then. That year, I got one ear that was my blue-gray dent. Just knowing, to combine those various varieties is pretty amazing. And what he's looking for says, when I planted seed from the next year, you could see the firing and albinoism. So some had no chlorophyll and they were all white. Others that had the firing problem, he says, he defines that as they dried up and died just as the tassels were supposed to develop. When it started coming up, it looked like someone had sprinkled salt and pepper all over the field with the white ones and the dead ones and the brown ones. But that weeded itself out. And the thing that is interesting to me is, I'm trying this and I tried that, it worked itself out. It's not like it worked itself over weeks. This is over seasons of planting again and again. When I finally thought I had that all cleared up, and I had my blue-gray dent stabilized, suddenly some pink appeared in it. So I picked out the pink colors and isolated them. And when I grew them, I had the albinoism and firing to deal with all over again. Those first few years would have been enough to discourage most breeders. In fact, there was a point when he came back from the war where he almost abandoned the whole project. Ernest Strubbe served in the Army for 4 years during World War II. He was stationed in Italy and Germany, and that's when he purchased his camera. But when he returned to the farm afterwards, he described thinking, I decided I would settle down to serious farming and forget some of my assorted hobbies. He tossed his collection of corn along with a rock collection onto the rubbish pile. And this is years of work, where they laid forgotten for 4 days. But he kept thinking about the vast, untried possibilities, and so he retrieved them. Fortunately, it hadn't rained, and the collection was still in perfect condition. So we can all breathe easy there. I love that he got rid of them, but then he was still thinking about it. One remarkable thing about Strubbe's technique is the gentle relationship with natural processes that he uses. Like I said, this is season to season. He's not forcing things in greenhouses. He's not doing cloning of DNA. That same 1982 Harvest Edition article featured a section explaining how breeders should hand pollinate their corn to get different varieties. And in the interview, Kent, the Wheatley, asked him if Ernest was hand pollinating his own corn. And he explained that he doesn't need to. He would plant his experimental corn patches in 4-row wide 20 or 50 foot sections with a gap between, and just let the steady Stevens County northwest wind carry the pollen from plant to plant. I mean, that's a reliable wind. He would also carefully observe the results and hand sort the best ears of corn, or even individual kernels of corn. And so little by little over the years, he expanded each color until each patch was able to be 20 rows wide. And now he's getting more and more yield for each of the varieties that he's refining. When he got a color at least partially isolated, he would take the purest forms for a pure patch. The odds and ends, he would toss in an old wash bin, and then he would use that plant blend and or that seed blend to plant a section for pheasant food. And even there, he was alert, and he was alert enough to notice brown dent and purple dent showing up in that patch. So again, he would isolate those and get the next color. He says, you know, some of the prettiest corns that you can get, I've seen a few corns that were accidents in my mixed peasant plots, are a solid black ear with either bright blue kernels speckled through it or bright green kernels speckled through it, or a bright rose pink. He's also a very good writer and talker. Speaker. He wouldn't say talker, maybe, I don't know. I think you can get any combination you want, really. You won't get 100% for a while, but as long as you get a few ears, you can always start it from there and go on. He continued this process for decades until the corn colors were quite stable. Oops. The Adaptive Seed Company credits Ernest Strubbe for in their seed description. They quote him saying, as it was really this is for the blue, ES blue cob corn. It really is the prettiest one of the whole bunch. And it's pretty pretty. But even here, after 50 years of work, he was still trying to improve the variety. He said, by no means do I consider any of them a finished variety. But they are to the point now that if you plant blue seed, you will get all blue. But you may get some slightly different shading of blue. I just wish I had 20 more years to work on them. The green corn came from the original bronze black corn that he got from crossing the black popcorn and the yellow field corn. One fall, I happened to be looking at it in the sun to see how many different colors I could get to reflect. So not only is he looking for individual corn colors, but he's reflecting them to see how they change and what's really in there. There were some blues, some purples, some brownish bronze, and the like. And one time there was this bright green reflection. It wasn't even in the corn, it was the way it reflected off the corn. You had to hold it just right. That fired my imagination, I'm still quoting. I wondered if it would be possible to produce a green color. I could see the possibility of producing most of these others, but green? I hunted and hunted through that stuff, and every time I would find a kernel that had the faintest suggestion of a green reflection, I picked it out and grew that in isolation. For the first 10 years or so, it seemed quite hopeless, just plain frustrating, because only occasionally would I find a kernel that was really green. But all at once, it started to get greener and greener and greener and greener. Every year it looked a little more promising, so I kept going. After about 40 years, lo and behold, one fall when I was picking, I found a couple ears that were really green. The art of patience. He then went on to explain that there was quite a lot of work to do. This was after 40 years. One year, Gurney Seed and Nursery wrote Ernest Strubbe and wanted to grow 50 bushels of his green dent corn. They had heard about it through different cord breeders he was writing with. That struck him as kind of funny because all the green corn that he had, he could hold in 2 hands, and they wanted 50 bushels. Here again, we see Ernest Strubbe's blend of generosity and perfectionism. One year, the catalog, oh, this is a quote again. "One year in their catalog, I noticed what looked like my green dent. So I wrote them a really pointed letter asking them where they got that green corn. They immediately took it out of their catalog. They even refunded money to some of my friends who had ordered it. I wasn't really mad because they were offering it, but more because it wasn't perfected yet." So someone had gotten a hold of some seeds and taken it someplace where it shouldn't have gone. Perhaps this incident would presage the later confusion over Oaxacan green corn, green maize, which is where we are here. So Ernest Strubbe registered ES green dent corn with the U.S.D.A. in 1977. In a 1922 article for the Experimental Farm Network, Nate Kleinman expresses doubt about the Oaxacan origins. You can see it says Oaxacan green dent corn, of green corn seeds. And you can just see they package it, heirloom. They're really trying to market it and make you feel good about buying something that's exotic. And it is exotic, but it's not from Oaxaca. But Nate does go on to praise the wonderful corn and notes, while likely not of Mexican order, it is nevertheless makes great green tamales and green tortillas. They're just not a direct result of Mexican culture. Anecdotally, Nate notes the listings started to appear in the late 1990s and early 2000. He speculates that either the name was changed deliberately for marketing appeal or perhaps lost its origins as it was passed from hand to hand. At the time, the truth had to remain a mystery because, as Nate notes, a simple PCR test, I don't know what that means, I couldn't find that, would perhaps confirm the origins. But who can afford that? Update, they write, in 2025, some wonderfully nerdy corn scientists have gone and proven us right, and even published their conclusion, including a quote from this write-up as the only seed company the only seed company description to accurately describe where it actually came from, in the prestigious Crop Science magazine.
Okay, hi, I'm Jim Holland.
And I'm Martha Wilcox.
And we're going to tell you a little story that we just published in Crop Science. It's called Oaxacan Green Dent Maize is Not from Oaxaca. Here are our co-authors. And this picture here is an ear of Oaxacan Green Dent maize. And it's a very interesting corn variety because it has these green kernels, which is really rare. Actually, it's almost unique in maize. It's a very popular variety now among heirloom seed dealers and growers. People are really interested in it because it's a beautiful and interesting variety. However, there's an interview done in 1986 by the folks at Seed Savers Exchange with this gentleman, Ernest Strubbe, who was a painter and a farmer and also a breeder. And he deposited a variety called Ernest Strubbe's Green Dent in the U.S.D.A. seed collection in 1977, so quite a long time ago. And they interviewed him about this, and he explained the pedigree of his variety, that he had crossed Minnesota 13, a typical yellow dent type variety, to Black Beauty, popcorn. And for 40 years, he got a range of seed colors out of it, and he kept selecting for over and over for green seeds. And now he developed this population that has mostly green kernels. We thought probably this thing that people are calling Oaxacan green dent might actually be Ernest Strubbe's green dent. And also when I grew it in the field, I said, this does not look like anything from Oaxaca to me. It looks like a well-adapted USA type corn variety. And Martha's going to tell you about what corn from Oaxaca actually looks like.
Yeah, this is the this is bolita maize, which is one of the most iconic types of maize grown in Oaxaca. It's what tlayudas are made from. It is associated with the Zapotec culture in the Valles Centrales in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And it, as you can see, this is the color range that this particular maize has. Yellow, white, black, and kind of it's actually called color of the gusano de maguey. But this is what Oaxacan maize looks like in the Zapotec region. Many of the seed dealers say that Oaxacan green dent is a traditional variety from the Zapotec people. That's not the case. There are several varieties in different parts of Oaxaca that are typically used. There are 35 different variants of maize in Oaxaca, and none of them are green. This is a picture of Zapolote Chico, which comes from the isthmus, the isthmus of Oaxaca. It's also very well known, and it is always white. These are the regions that we are talking about in this paper, and you can see the red dots are where the collections came from that we evaluated, and they're associated with this Zapotec culture that is noted in all of these announcements and sales pitches for Oaxacan green.
So we took those samples of the Oaxacan varieties and we grew them in North Carolina alongside some U.S.A. corn populations, and also samples of Oaxacan green dent we obtained from some heirloom seed dealers. So there's a number of traits here. And on the left, this is the distribution of the values for the true Oaxacan materials. And these are the distributions of the Oaxacan green dent samples here. And then always on the sort of the right position is the USA Corn Belt. And what you can see from this pretty clearly is that the Oaxacan green dent samples, when you grow them in the field, they look phenotypically very much like the other USA Corn Belt populations, and they look very distinct from Oaxacan maize. We also sequenced the DNA of a number of these varieties. Everything in magenta is from Oaxaca. Everything in yellow is from the USA Corn Belt. Everything in green is either a Oaxacan green dent sample from a seed dealer or samples of things like the ES green dent from the U.S.D.A. PI collection. All you need to know is that everything from Oaxaca is very, very distinct from the Oaxacan green dent material. So the genetic evidence is very clear that Oaxacan green dent is not from Oaxaca, and it clearly belongs to, was derived from Ernest Strubbe's green dent variety. Look at this variety if you're interested. Please just call it Ernest Strubbe's green dent.
And please stop using Oaxacan to describe this, because it devalues the quality of maize from Oaxaca, which is very distinct. Thank you.
Well, all right, thank you.